the length of a rectangle is 5 inches longer than half of its width. The area of a rectangle is 72 square inches. How many inches wide is the rectangle? So let's draw this rectangle first, and let's visualize this. We have some type of rectangle, and it says here the length of the rectangle is 5 inches longer than half of its width. So we have a width here, some type of W, and the length here is going to equal, it says here, 5 inches longer than half of its width. So a half of its width, half times W, plus 5 inches longer, right? So we have these two guys here, and the area is 72 square inches, right? So how many inches wide? We want to determine the width of the rectangle. So knowing our equations here, the area of a rectangle equals length times width, right? So area here is going to equal length, which is equal to half of the width plus 5. Times W, right? So L here is half W plus 5 here. And we know that area here equals 72, right? So we know that 72 is going to equal half times W plus 5 times W, right? So now all we have to do is now just isolate for our W here. So let's do our operations. So we have 72 equals, so we're going to use distributive property. So half W times W is half W squared, and then 5 times W is simply 5W, right? And then what we can do now is we can actually bring 72 on this side to create a quadratic equation. So 0 equals half W squared plus 5W minus 72. And this here is going to be our quadratic equation. What we could do here is we could try to factor, or we could just use the quadratic equation. I would simply just use the quadratic equation in this case because my a value, this leading variable here, is not 1. So I would just use the quadratic equation. So I'll do some blue and kind of greenish. So W is going to equal plus negative b, so negative 5 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 5 squared, minus 4ac, so 4 times half, times c here, all over 2 times half, 2a. So negative 5 plus or minus, this is the square root of 25, 5 squared is 25, minus, I have 4 times half here, which is 2, times 70 times 72 here, which is going to give me 144. And that is going to give me an imaginary number. So actually, I might have done something wrong here because I shouldn't get an imaginary number here. So let me just erase this real quick. So let's actually go back and figure out what we did incorrectly here. So let's see. Length of a rectangle is 5 inches longer than half of its width. So half width plus 5. And we have here's the width here. 72 is the area of half W plus 5 equals W. Half W times W is half W squared plus 5W. So I should have made my equation good though. So maybe I did something wrong with the quadratic formula. This is negative b. So negative 5 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 5 squared, minus 4 times a times negative 72. So there's a 5 here. Just give me a second. 0.55 negative 72. So let's see. Let me just look at the solution to see whether or not they got this right as well. So they wrote L here equals 5 plus W and not a half w plus 5. It's saying here the length of the rectangle is 5 inches longer than so they forgot actually half of its width here. So because of that, they actually made the wrong equation. They wrote L equals w plus 5 when it's supposed to be half of w plus 5 here. So this solution is immediately incorrect. So I believe that the steps are correct, but they didn't write half of the w as well. So I believe that my solution here is correct here. And I'm just trying to figure out how to get rid of this imaginary square. Because I'm going to have negative 5 plus or minus 25 minus 144, I believe. Oh no, this is negative 72. I forgot to put the minus here. So this is actually going to be plus 144. There we go. Times 2 times half. So I forgot the negative sign here. So this is going to equal negative 5 plus or minus 25 plus 144 is going to be 179. 2 times half here is simply just 1. So I have negative 5 plus root 179, or negative 5 minus root 179 here. And this here is going to give me the square root of 179 is going to give me, or sorry, 140 is 169. Oh, it's 179, sorry. Let me erase these guys here. So this is the square root of 169. Square root of 169 is going to be 13. So negative 5 plus 13. Negative 5 minus 13 here. Negative 5 plus 13 is going to be 8. And negative 5 minus 13 is going to be negative 18. So again, because my length cannot be, or my width cannot be negative, 8 is going to be my correct answer. So the width of the rectangle is going to be, w is going to equal 8. So that's going to be my answer for this problem. And it's asking how many inches wide is rectangle. So width here is 8 inches. So therefore, width of rectangle equals 8. So we say, so the solution here is incorrect. Incorrect solution. Length should equal 0.5 width plus 5 instead of L equals W plus 5. And then I'm just going to quote this. We are missing the half of its width in your equation. Therefore, the answer is 8 inches for length of the rectangle. So the solution here is incorrect.